Didn't even need to say anything that time. Right, so we're going to do a wee bit of a Q&A. I don't want to make anybody stand up and be all nervous, so if you have got a question, you can come and have a wee seat down here. Paul's got a mic set up there. The only reason we're doing it on the mic is because we're recording it, just so we can hear the questions and what Graeme's going to say. So, is there anybody that's got questions? I've got a couple first, just so... Yes, Mark. Yes, you come down and get a seat, mate. And I'll ask you this one in the meantime. So, potential... If the young team becomes a TV show, right? Who would you want to play as?
Oh, man.
Don't say yourself.
Me and Ben, the screenwriter, we sometimes see people and we're like, they look pretty good. Kyle Gordon's a young actor for the Casey, and he probably was the leading man in a wee short film I did with James Price.
Yep.
Honestly, you could do a lot worse, that's for sure. Because he's an authentic kid from Glasgow. He's like a young Martin Compston. You know, we asked him to sit in a room full of lived experience, right? It was actually, believe it or not, it was 32 degrees that day, and I was in there acting as well, making an arse of it. But he did amazing, honestly. So I hope, if he's not Azzy, I hope he's in it in some meaningful capacity. Yeah. Seriously, I would petition for that. Right, but sometimes we see, I don't know, just different people, you know what I mean? Just it's young, it's a strange age, isn't it? Because we're asking an actor to play a 15-year-old kind of going into an 18 or a 19 or 21-year-old, so it's, don't know. Aye. I always worry about that age. You know, we watched House of the Dragon recently, and you know, when they change cast, it's hard to relate to it sometimes, you know what I mean? Because you're like, oh, she's not Rhaenyra, or that, you know what I mean? So, I don't know, I hope they don't do that, I hope they just run right through.
Love it.
Listen.
Mark, there you go, mate.
Firstly, thanks again for setting this up. We were saying during the break, it's been both tough but also inspiring to listen to, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been brilliant so far. So, not comparing apples with oranges, but I work at Strathclyde, so there's a thin slice of what you said about sounding right that resonated earlier, and you also said about sanitising what you said. And when I write, in fact, as a parent, I'm always becoming the bits of my parents I'd rather forget. You would say stuff like, "Ain't it?" and they would say, "Isn't it?" And you're always being corrected from Scots into English. So my question is really about how you write and really how you chose to go down that road of writing in Scots rather than English as the first choice.
You know, you get a lot of credit for doing it, and some of it is just, I think some of it's warranted and some of it's unwarranted, because this is my voice. And people often remark on my voice, you know, because they might not have met me, but they'll hear me. You know what I mean? I didn't realise I had an accent. Seriously, everybody sounds like this at my bit. You know, I just speak the way my granny spoke, right? My mum lived in South with my dad, right, for years. My dad was in the military, so, you know, he had an English accent even though he was Canadian, right? So my mum didn't have the really strong Scots, right? And if you know your Airdrie and Coatbridge linguistics, right? Airdrie is very Scots, right? In Coatbridge, because of the Irish influx, you know, and the Irish heritage of the town, it's actually slightly more Anglified, ironically. Right, because see when I went to Coatbridge High, the Coatbridge ones were like, "You sound dead rough, man, all the Airdrie ones." And I was like, "Do we?" But actually it's because we're more Scots. It's more Scots. Genuinely, it's a very, so phonetically, I just transcribed the way I spoke. And I would encourage everybody to do the same, regardless of how difficult that might be, you know, later on. Write as you want to write, where it's, you know, your voice. And it's hard to find a voice, you know. Is Azzy my voice? No, that's a fictional voice, right? Is a memoir my voice? What it needs to be, but that's hard still to find your voice, you know what I mean? Yeah. But I think at the very beginning, right, I was worrying about publishing questions, right? Am I allowed to say Burgos? Will they sue me? Right? Do you know what I mean? It's like you worry about big stuff when you should just be focusing on, is this a good story? Is it actually firing on all cylinders? Is it working as fiction? You know what I mean? Yeah. So I started the concrete steps and then worry about the big stuff later. That's my advice.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mark. Surely there's somebody else that's got a question. This is like school. Everybody's looking down like that. Yeah, on you go. Not at all. I feel like Super Scoreboard now.
Hiya, how you doing?
Hello. So I was really touched earlier when you were saying about that you came from a good home and that you were a really loving wee guy, and in your words, you became a monster. And it really, really touched me. And I'm trying not to get emotional here, but also because I'm a mum as well of a soon-to-be 10 and 8-year-old boys. So first of all, I wanted to ask you, what do you think, in the years where you felt you became a monster, what was it you think helped your mum to cope with the years? And then secondly, the last part of my question, what advice would you give to mums for the next 10 years?
That's a lot of pressure.
Because you know, the world's mental.
Do you know what? I think, see, when I used that word monster, right, I wasn't a monster, right? I was just a wee guy existing in a very kind of tough environment. But I think what I'm doing right now, right, is self-therapy by writing a memoir. I'm picking the scabs off wounds that have long healed, but they've healed bumpy, you know what I mean? So I'm looking back, and I'll tell you, man, honestly, you know, my dad was in the Air Force, right? So I grew up, right, because he died when I was just 4. But I was obsessed, right? And I really admired this military figure, you know what I mean? So I used to be obsessed with planes, right? And I would build the wee models, and my mum would help me stick them in the roof in my bedroom. There was like millions of them. I think there was about 80 planes, honestly. I was obsessed with it. I loved it, right? And I took them all down one day, so I did. And I just started stripping all the remnants of my childhood out of my life, right? And my mum she took us on holiday one year and we went to that Sioux City in Gran Canaria, and she had like a wanted poster with me, you know what I mean, just a wee kid thing. And I ripped it up, I tossed it in the bin, right? And it was like, just all sorts, right? And I remember looking down at all that stuff in the bin, and I'm like, why did I do that? Right? And I didn't think about it for 20 years, right? But that's what I'm talking about, like, see, that's what memoir's painful, do you know what I mean? Because I'm like, why did I do that? Because I was trying to look like a tough guy. That's the truth. And any kind of softness, right? I grew up in a female environment, right? I had a mum, a sister, an aunt, a gran, right? My uncle was there, but it was a female dominant world, you know what I mean? So I'm like, how do I become a man? Right? I want to make myself tough, right? One of my pals taught me to shave, right? He's like, oh no, you're shaving too close to your lip, mate. You're going to have my tails in your lip, right? Do you know what I mean? Like, I was teaching myself. And you never teach yourself well, right? Who teaches you, right? Guys in the street, older, big brothers, big cousins, right? My mum didn't have a look in, right? I was already beyond the point of no return at 13, 14, right? I had been, the lure gangs, right, was so seductive to me, right? Because it filled in that hole in the missing shape of a father, right? That's truth, that's the truth. I wrote that in my memoir, right? And I filled it with all the badness of this area, right? Violence, drugs, sectarianism, right? All of that, right? My mum loved me and worked hard, right? And it was always there for me. It's 2 parents instead of 1. She never remarried, right? And I threw it all away. And that's what I mean. I became a monster. I became this, like, devoid of feeling. You know what I mean? But her hand was always outstretched, ready for me to grab it. And in the moment, all the moments when I came back home, right? I phoned my mum at fucking Fantasia one night, at Fantasylands in Ingliston at 4 o'clock in the morning because I took too many ecstasy tablets and I was absolutely at my scone, right? I wasn't enjoying it, because I'd stayed out all weekend, right? I'd stayed out like the Thursday, the Friday. I was at this big rave. I phoned her at 4 o'clock in the morning, right, out my nut and pills, and I'm like, can you come pick me up? She was in that motor, right, and she drove all the way up to Ingliston, and I'm sitting outside, and actually one of the funniest things in my whole rave career happened, right? Sorry to detour, it's worth telling us a story about, right? See, when I was getting into that rave, I met this guy, right, and he's like, fuck's sake, big man, you're not all these, man, you're a hardcore raver, my man, right? And I'm like, aye, man, I'm buzzing and all that, right? See, when I was walking out, he was sitting outside, right, waiting for his girlfriend to pick him up, right, with a wee foil blanket, and he's like, been to too many now, man. And I laughed, right, I was out my nut, but it cheered me up, and my mum came and got me, right? And I had, see, back then, used to put the raves on the Clyde One, so I was listening to the rave on the way down, and she endured that. But that was just one example of how she came to rescue me, and she was always there, right? So, and what she says is, I just never closed the door on you, right? Even though I wanted to, even though you did my nutting, even though you deserved it sometimes. You know, because at what point do our parents' duties cease, right? a lot of parents, right, they're like, right, you're 16, you're 18, you're working, and you go, that's you, I've got my partner, I've got my own life now, right? She never did that. She didn't have a partner, so she just never gave up, to the point where actually she still acts as if I'm a 12-year-old, you know what I mean? But that's the only advice I could give. She just said that duty never ended with her, it was always there. I said that in the young team, she's a true unsung hero, right? She was tougher than any gang member I ever met. That's what you need to be, just be there for them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
Is Kaylee here? Would you like to come up, or would you like me to ask? You want to come up? You want to come up? I feel you would do it more justice than me. Thank you so much.
Hello, Graeme, how you doing?
Hiya.
So I'm an English teacher, and I know that you were saying about going out in schools a lot, and I've seen your Instagram going out in schools a lot as well. So my question was about using the young team as a Scottish set text. Have you been approached by the SQA? Interested to know. And also, what other contemporary Scottish authors do you think pupils should be studying in school? It's quite an old-fashioned, in my opinion.
Cone gatherers and slabs, like, yeah.
So what would be...
What would be my perfect SQA?
What would be your perfect SQA? What should I teach my pupils?
Well, I've not been approached by the SQA, to be honest with you. I think schools that are using the young team are very forward thinking, and I'm honoured to be taught in schools, that's the truth. And honestly, it's been a privilege of my life to go and work with students, especially the ones. I got a message from Clyde Bank High, who I'd spoke with twice as their higher group, and every single student that studied young team passed. So I was delighted to hear that, honestly. Thank you. All credit goes to the young students, you know. I mean, they applied themselves. Clyde Bank, like Airdrie, is an area of high deprivation, of low ambition, right? So see, when I go to these places, I'm a wee bit biased, you know, because see, when I go to Drumchapel, I drive through Mulgai, right? That energises me to get into Drumchapel, right? Because I see lives 5 minutes away, right, that are completely different, right? And then I go into Drumchapel and there's an orange hall and 2 funeral parlours in one street, right? And kids that have had none of their family went to university, right? And when they're in a higher class, they're not only fighting sometimes for a future, but they're fighting for their life, and they're fighting to change the destinies of generations of people that will come after them. So it can't get, the stakes can't get any higher for these kids, as you know, where you are. So, and I always just revert to female writers, to Kerry Hudson, to Jenny Fagan, because I read them when I was at that pivotal moment. I had just finished my undergrad degree and I was starting to study masters, which was a unbelievable dream for somebody like me, and to graduate with a 2-1. So I encountered Kerry Hudson and Jenny Fagan because they were both published in 2012, 2013. Panopticon is the young team. It's just, that's their retelling of their own life in a fictional way. You know, and both of them have followed up with memoirs. Jenny's is forthcoming, Kerry's is Lowburn. So there's an interesting shift there of how their lives were fictionalised, and then, you know, they found the voice or the courage to tell their own story. So that's where I'd start. And I might have a memoir somewhere like 3 years later, so if I get through this PhD.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll ask you another one just while people get themselves G'd up.
Mm-hmm.
Based on where you are now, based on what you've done in the past however many years, what would you go back and tell 13, 14-year-old Graeme?
Slow down. Just slow down, honestly. I was just in such a hurry to grow, do you know that? And I actually think that there's a real reason why lost youth is really the underpinning theme of all my work. You know, it's a sense of just squandered youth more than lost. You know, I didn't lose it. I threw it away. I threw it in the bin, you know, with all the childhood stuff, you know what I mean? And I just think adulthood's coming. You know, it's coming hard. You know, I found myself, right, drug-free, right, 25, with very few friends, right, and just this longing to relive a youth, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I worked in retail stores as well as selling cars sometimes, and I worked in like mountain stores, like go outdoors and all that, because I just felt like doing outdoor sports was like an adventure or something, you know, going up mountains, it was like a youthful thing. And I think, by the way, where that came from was because I got took to a boys' brigade camp to Arran. You know, and it was just before, it was at that very first moment before gangs, you know what I mean? And I honestly, leaving the boys' brigade at that first moment was another pivotal moment for me, because my mum was really passionate about it and thought it was a great thing. 'Cause it was Friday night, it kept young guys off the streets, and my mum had always volunteered at it. So she had, and aye man, you know, I'd went to the camp, and you're in company section, so you wear it's quite a military uniform, you know what I mean? Obviously that's her background as well, my dad, so, but I had been seduced by gangs. I felt the lure and the pull of that, right, and the adventure that offered, and I was like, I'm not going back. And honestly, I know that broke her heart, and she really I was gravitating away for the young man that she thought I might be, or who I could be. Like, her dad was a para, you know, he was a sergeant major in the parachute regiment, so you see her values, you know. So it was a big decision, mate, you know, coming away from that and changing. So I would say slow down, honestly, just slow down.
See, on the back of that, and you might have had it, you might have had kids coming to speak to you when you've been in schools. What about, and I said this when we spoke before, if you've got young guys watching this, probably in your shoes, what would you say to young girls as well? Because gang culture is massive for girls as well as guys, but what would you say to them to try and support?
I'm glad you said that, Gary, because I don't always think my work serves young women that well, and I think because I wasn't a young woman, you know, and the struggles of young women in young teams are different, you know. There is additional challenges and dangers, right, that I wasn't qualified to talk about at 14, and I still am, really, you know. So, but and it is normally boys I speak to, you know, whether it's adult learners in prison or that, but honestly, I would just say, seriously, evaluate your heroes, right? I found father figures in the figures, mythological gang figures and all that, and they're just boys in tracksuits that were a wee bit older than me, but I looked up to them and I wanted to emulate them, right? And I was looking at all the wrong people, right? Back to the boys' brigade, right? See, when I left, right? See the boys who came into the boys' brigade, they had to walk past us at the shop, standing waiting for drink, right? And honestly, we gave them a hard time, right? Because then I thought, these are a bunch of fucking pussies. Why, you know, here with us fucking getting a bottle of wine and fucking not mean joining the gang and all that. They were the fucking heroes. They were the guys who had courage, the courage enough to walk past us. We were the cowards, right? We threw it away, they kept it. And let me tell you, our life trajectory is very different, right? They're married, they've got kids, they've got fantastic jobs, they snowboard, they do all the things that are unattainable for a lot of the guys who stood out in the street and drunk buckfast. That's a hard revelation. That hit me hard when I thought that. And I thought about those guys doing that, right? That took courage to go against the crowd, right? And our young people now, right? Look, who's our heroes? Andrew Tate, people like that, right? Svengalis, right? Cultural Svengalis, social media Svengalis, right? That are manipulating young people's minds. Young people are very pliable, right? They always have been, right? They're very pliable, right? It doesn't take much encouragement culturally, right, socially, for them to go down a very, very dark and bad road, right? And this social media, it wasn't, the advent of social media was only beginning in our youth, right? We used to argue and build websites and argue in the guest book, and it was very primitive stuff, you know what I mean? The digital landscape.
MSN.
It was, man, right? MSN, keyboard warriors and all that, right? But you didn't have access to all the kind of filth, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just the stuff that really warps young guys' minds, you know? And I was surprised to hear that, you know, about teachers talking about misogyny and all that, and I was thinking, that wasn't really a feature when we were growing up. We came from working class backgrounds with matriarchal figures. It was quite an old-fashioned code, do you know what I mean, about how you treated lasses. So a lot of people talk to me about that, and I'm like, that's not my experience. Like, the girls were revered in the gang, they were part of the gang, they weren't like victims of the gang, they were gang members equally. I know that's not the case in other parts of the world, but in Scotland it was, you know. So I think it's challenging for young people now.
Well, we said that when we spoke before, you could just as easily have a girls' version of your book.
I would love to read
based
that.
on their
I've said
own
that a million times,
views.
honestly. I really would love to read that, do you know that? And people say, why does that not exist? And I'll say, well, I'll tell you why, because we've got young children, right? They're working, they're at home, right? You know, they've had chaotic home lives, some of these girls, right? And they don't get the opportunity to just disappear, you know? They're caregivers, right? They're working, that doesn't leave a lot of free time for 300 rejections in 7 years of just pure literary warfare, which is what it was. Right? It's hard to publish a book like that. Yeah. Right? It takes something, man, to take all that shite and regurgitate it. But honestly, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I'll say it forever. I wish somebody would do it and they'll have my full support.
Yeah. Love that. Anybody else? Any questions? Oh, there's a hand. Down you come. Down you come. I love it. This is like school now. The sneaky hand goes up.
This is one of the students, by the way.
Oh,
that's
brilliant.
On the year, so.
That's why you're starting to look nervous now.
I was just wondering, for like the TV series, like with casting, would you want to cast like local people who like would have like experience with like young teams or stuff, or would you want like actual actors?
If I had my way, it would exclusively be that, right? But they'll probably say that you do need some people with some acting experience, or it would be, you know, like, have you seen Sweet 16? Nah, it's a classic, right? It was the making of Martin Compston, right? And he was under the wing of Ken Loach, who's a genius, right? He's a filmic genius, right? And he took him straight out of school. He was at the chance where he was a big Celtic boy, right? He wanted to play for Celtic, right? He was about to sign for Morton, so his professional football career was about to start. And he took a leap of faith into acting. And obviously, he's one of Scotland's best now and most known young actors. So I just think we need somebody with a vision to see a Martin Compston like Kyle Gordon or other young people who, you know what, it's not just an opportunity, but it's a life-changing opportunity, you know. And I think honestly they would bring a realism to the thing that a theatre school simply cannot teach, you know. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, of course you can.
Thank you.
No worries.
I just wanted to ask, you mentioned while you were talking, Graeme, that you had gone from somebody who felt kind of like a fish out of water at uni and maybe out your depth, and now you're doing your PhD, which I think is freaking amazing. And I just wanted to ask, you said you're writing your memoir as part of your PhD, and I just wondered, how different is the process this time round, like writing as part of an academic qualification compared to when you wrote the young team?
It's tough, to be honest. The young team, I didn't have monthly scrutiny, you know, with academics reading it, you know, and pulling it apart, which is what they are. That's their role, you know. To normally that kind of level of criticism and input comes right at the end, you know, when the thing's in its final form. It's happening month by month, almost at the minute. So it's tough, you know, even for a professional writer. And it is a fairly unique situation, as they said, because you have already made a significant contribution to Scottish literature, you know, and we want to enhance what you've got. But that said, I'm only 32, so I'm still in a learning role, you know. There's stuff I don't know, and I don't consider myself a master. I'm still a student, you know, so it's been a good experience. And to be honest, a memoir is such a committing thing, emotionally, technically, it's harder than fiction. You know, you're not just writing first person present tense when you're just telling the story and, you know, what you're feeling, but then you've got varying levels of perspective. So what did I think then? That's obvious, but what do I think now about what I thought then, and how do you marry the two? You know, so it's technical, and I honestly, it is difficult. So I'm glad I'm at uni and I've got someone encouraging me, you know, it's tough. So
yeah.
Both of them are tough. All writing's tough.
Yeah.
Writing is a dirty business, you know. You're on your own, battering words. There's a doubter inside all creatives, I think. I think if there isn't and you think everything's amazing, then you're probably not. You know, it's usually the opposite. Mm-hmm. But you need to then silence the doubt and just push on and create something. You know, so I still feel that. I think all writers do, you know. So.
And do you think, can I just sneak in another wee question? Do you think it's difficult for your academic team to be supervising somebody who's actually a professional, successful writer? Because I imagine it would be quite difficult.
I don't think so. I think they're very good. They're good. They're established people in their own right. They're experts. I'm not an expert. You know, I'm I don't think I'm a particular, I was chatting about this with a friend, I don't think I'm an intellectual, you know, I'm a writer, I'm an artist, it's probably how I would feel, you know, I'm building worlds, you know, and it is art in that way, but I'm not well read in terms of academia or the writers of the world, you know, my scope of reference is narrow, and while it's deep, it's still narrow, you know, so I'm learning off these people a lot. So,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you.
No, thanks.
See, when you were saying there about the business not being a bit kind of cutthroat and it is quite isolated, see if you could take one bit of it and change it, what would it be?
I just think we've got a real lack of community in Scotland, you know that? I think writing is a very fetishised profession. People think writing's a beautiful thing. We all just sit and drink caramel lattes and Costa all day, and it's really not like that. Honest, maybe it is for some people, right? But for me, especially in the last 3 years, I gave up my full-time employment to be a writer, and writers don't earn a lot of money, right? So it's been a very precarious way to earn money. You know, there's no monthly income. You're paid royalties twice a year, and they ain't much, believe me.
Which is probably a big misconception as well.
Oh, most definitely. You know, if you're an authentic working class writer and you're trying to survive on book, no income, it's almost impossible. You know, the only way I survived writing Braveheart was because Creative Scotland funded me for a year, 8 months to write at full time and go for it. But then as soon as that expired, I was back selling cars. You know, I was working in the East End of Glasgow selling cars. And sometimes one of my ex-girlfriends met a friend and she said, "Oh, have you heard that Graeme Armstrong? He's a millionaire." And she was laughing. She's like, "He's definitely not a millionaire. He's working selling cars in the East End of Glasgow in Ridley." It's just people, you know, you get this kind of razzmatazz and you get publicity and people just assume that's actually making a fortune, and it isn't like that. That's why it's becoming so difficult to be a working class writer, because you need to go out and do a full-time job and all the stress and hardship that brings. Work is a nightmare, you know, for all of us. And then to come home, you know, and start again, you know, start another shift. And that was the reality for many, many years. I was working till 7 and 8 o'clock at night. I was coming home, eating a dinner, and then I would work again. And I'd be writing till midnight, and then I'd just have to rinse and repeat, and that lasted years. And then, I don't know, at times I thought I was going to lose my mind, you know, because I just went through it so much, and I was like, this is just never going to happen, you know. But I just kept bashing away, and it is a war of attrition.
Yeah.
Nothing else for it.
Love it. We've got time for one more. Oh yes, right down the front, hand up right away. This is going to be the best question of the night.
No pressure on. Actually, I would just... No, I'm not going to move. I'm far too lazy for that. Sorry. I would just say, like, I really resonated with lots of things you said. Teachers are human beings. I am a teacher. And then also what you were saying about kind of who advocates for young males. Like, I am a big sister. My brother is 11 years younger than me, and like male mental health is something that I'm really passionate about. And then what you were saying for the first question about kind of like your voice and your accent. I'm from Dundee and I don't think I have an accent, but I've just moved to Northland to teach in Northland, and the kids, like, Dundee's schemy, by the way, like Dundee is schemy.
I know, I was in Whitfield and Fintry.
Yeah, so like, that's where I used to teach. So I am a schemy gal, and the kids at my new school are like, "Why are you so posh?" And I'm like, "Oh, hun, I'm not posh." But what I've noticed in the last year of being in Northland is that although Dundee is like the drug death capital of Europe and it's got so much poverty, the poverty that I've experienced and the violence and the gangs in Northland is so different to what I'm used to. So my actual question is, after this rant, what do you think makes North Lanarkshire different? Like, why do you think it is different?
I was filming a gangs documentary in Dundee in those schemes, right? And honestly, see, after our first day, there was a kind of palpable still when we were sitting in the van, and the director went, "Fucking hell." And I went, "I know, it's like a lawless hinterland, isn't it?" And he was like, "Honestly, aye, it's so forgotten, genuinely. People don't, like the waterfront and the V&A, that means fuck all to people in Whitfield and Fintry. They don't even know what that is, like, they don't even bother. You know what I mean? And what's it like? Honestly, it was like being in Easterhouse in the 2000s. That's what it feels like, isn't it? It's so deprived. And the regeneration, you know, it's there and you can see it, but the honeycomb flats aren't there anymore. Well, some of them are, right? But honestly, a long way to go up there. And what makes North Lanarkshire so bad? You know what? I've often wondered that, right? And sometimes we feel a wee bit like, see when I speak to guys for Easter House or Drumchapel and all that, I'm like, no, we were only fair in North Lanarkshire and all that. But at times, Lanarkshire surpassed Glasgow as murder capital of Scotland, by the way. And I think it is to do with something we spoke about before. It's a lack of social mobility, right? See people in the town, right? If you come for Yoker or you come for White Inch, any of the schemes, right? Where do you go if you're going shopping, right? You come into the town, right? You come into the city centre. You're city people, right? You've got a different movement. You know what I mean? Like, you're more confident in some ways, right? See people in Airdrie, right? Where do they go shopping? Airdrie Main Street, right? Where do they go for a haircut? Airdrie. They might go to the fort, right? But they don't leave. You know what I mean? It's like a goldfish bowl, right? And see, in that, it acts as like a pressure cooker, I think, because it's hopeless. It seems hopeless. You know what I mean? And I genuinely think that's what it is. And it's just the same culture, only just in a smaller amphitheatre, you know? That I don't envy in teaching North Lanarkshire. I have worked in a few schools there, obviously my own schools, you know? But aye. And very forgotten, by the way, a lot of the charities and, you know, big focus about prevention, it's all in the city. It's all in the areas of the worst deprivation. The satellite schemes are completely forgotten.
No, I totally agree. I took kids to Edinburgh and they were like, we've never been here. So it's like what you're saying is there's no, like, it's...
I've spoke with people that have volunteered with kids, right? And, like, you know, one of the people was, you know, it was like a buddy scheme for kids. And she was like, what do you normally get at McDonald's? And she's like, well, I don't know, I've never been. Right? And I'm not saying McDonald's is like, you know, a great aspiring diet, but she'd never been to McDonald's, right? Like, there's levels of poverty just that are hard to even understand, right? And there's a story I tell, and I seen this with my own eyes, right? Boy from Knightswood, right? And I was pals with him in uni, and one of his pals, right? He slept in mattresses, right? With his brothers and sisters, right? His mum was substance dependent, right? And he came up to Stirling, the house that we sat, right? And I was trying to find a stream for the Rangers game. So I was sitting typing away on my computer, and he was watching me, right? And I'm like, why is he staring at me? Right? And I was like, you alright, mate? And he went like that, right? Looked left to right, and he came up and he went, mate, you one of the mad hackers? Right? I thought that was hilarious, right? Honestly, I busted laughing. I swear to God, I was laughing, right? But it was only later, right, that it dawned on me, right? He's never used a computer out of school. Right? He's never seen I'm not talking about a PlayStation, right? He's never used a computer. He can't type, right? His outcome was really bad, like seriously bad, you know? And is that a wonder? Don't know. Did you ask me, sorry, how we stop all this?
No, I agree. I think, like, it's so strange coming from Dundee to Northland, because Dundee, although is really bad in one way, it's like the outcome seem better for the kids. And then coming to Northland in a school, it's like a whole different world. Even though the poverty levels are similar and the drug use is similar, it's just mental. Like,
can I say something, right, that might get me in bother? See, when you go with that's Central Scotland, I think that's an absolutely use. What does Central Scotland mean? Right? East and West, North and South, right? We're West of Scotland, right? We're West of Scotland folk, right? See people in Stirling, they're like friendlier, right? Yeah, I think they're quite friendly people, right? See, when I worked in schools in Stirling, the kids were a dream by the way. They were dead friendly and chatty and all that, right? And see, see places like Dundee and all that, I think that's a wee bit more similar. They're a wee bit like, I don't want to say country bumpkin, like, you know what I mean? It's just there's regional variations, probably the best way to say it. You know what I mean? I think there's subtle differences, right? You get into a shop in Stirling, they'll talk about you. You get into a shop in Glasgow, they'll not say a word to you, right? There's personality differences that come with the regions of Scotland. And I think Airdrie and Coatbridge are very compressed, right? And I think that makes people very down and very quite hard on the outside and less friendly in a way. And I think that actually has an impact on people's well-being. That's probably my thoughts on that.
Thank you.
If you've got a thought about that, Gary, you want to implicate yourself in it?
No, absolutely not. Just before we finish, I just want to say thanks to you, because obviously
Thank you, mate.
This has been about a year and a half of you first coming on the podcast, messaging back and forward, like we'd never met before the podcast. And then about 2 weeks ago, we're like, we'll meet up for a coffee and we'll plan this full night out. Met up for a coffee, sat for 2.5 hours and done fuck all to do with the actual. Got up the road and you message me and you're like, so what's the plan? And I'm like,
I know.
Don't know.
I don't think you need a plan with this.
Nah,
sort of
you don't.
Stuff, you know, and a lot of my work is very heavy. It's you see actual bits of light breaking through about the cars and about the rave and all that. It's like the light trying to go out, do you know what I mean? But I feel like there's a kind of purification process that you need to go through the pain, you need to do the trauma bit, and then you get to the other side. You know what I mean? That's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for me, is just celebrating where we come from, because I'm proud to be Fairdrie and Coatbridge, right? I'm proud to be Scottish, and I think there's so much to celebrate here with people and young people, and I think they need to remind that, right? We need to cut through all the bullshit and just reach people. That's what I'm all about.
Yeah.
That's it.
Graeme Armstrong, everybody.
Thank you.